back to the Beyond the Scope podcast presented by NDMD Productions. I'm your host, Andy, senior year medical student, slowly trudging my way through my fourth year of medical school. I apologize for the probably gap in episodes and vlogs. Updates will be coming soon. But here, of course, on this podcast, we continue the mission of sharing impactful stories from students, residents, and attendings of different medical professions while giving you an inside look into their lives, not just as healthcare workers, but the incredible people they are as well. But of course, this is all about the things those years of medical training doesn't really prepare you for, things that are beyond the scope of our practice. So with that being said, let's introduce today's guest. And this one is a very, very special one, near and dear to my heart. If you guys have been following the Beyond the Scope podcast, especially the video version, since the beginning, you'll probably recognize this face. He was one of the co-hosts kind of in the infant stages of this whole podcast. He's been a long time friend of mine. We knew each other since high school, and I think this is a almost celebratory episode, but also storytelling episode, because now not only do I get to call him an incredible friend, but a future fellow doctor and colleague. And that is something that I'm so proud to be able to say. And I think you have a story that is very unique, but also applicable to so many students out there, and something that I've told a lot of students in the pre-med process, that whenever they say, oh, I'm too stupid, I'm too dumb, like my grades aren't good enough for medical school, or like I just never felt smart enough to be a doctor, I think you are a shining example that like that mentality is not true and it can be overcome. So Will, welcome to the Beyond the Scope podcast again.
Oh, thanks, man. Oh my God, what an intro. Holy crap, dude. Thank you so much, man.
Now, that was completely off the dome. So
that was crazy. Just before you were talking about you don't have anything like prep. That was beautiful, man. I couldn't even write that.
No, I appreciate it. And of course, like over the past couple weeks, you've gotten news, well, I guess months, gotten news of medical school acceptance. So
yeah, man.
Everyone
good,
online,
dude.
clap, congratulate.
Thank you.
Long journey.
Yeah, long time coming.
And of course, like that's something that you are incredibly proud of, your family's incredibly proud of, I, as your friend, watching you throughout this entire journey, and certainly proud of. So I think without further ado, I really want this floor to be yours, because I think this story is something that everybody needs to hear. So wherever you want to start it, take it away, man.
Yeah. Oh, man. So let's see. So I think like I had no plans at all of pursuing anything like healthcare related. Like I wasn't like very ambitious growing up either, but like when I was younger, I think I was leaning towards just like, you know, any job that seemed like flashy or appealing in the moment. But I remember when I was younger, being ambitious was a little difficult because, like you were just talking about, a lot of students can relate. I just felt really like inferior to a lot of my classmates. I think that started when I was like younger. I think I just had some experiences where like things happening in my childhood that needed more attention than school, and me not being able to connect the dots, that doesn't mean I'm incapable. It just means that my energy isn't focused on school right now. But I had it in my head that, yeah, I'm like too dumb. And I struggled with it a lot when I was little, and then going into middle and in high school, I really struggled because I was in like AP gifted classes with a lot of my friends, and I really enjoyed being around them, but everyone just seemed to naturally be so much better at school, and I really had a hard time just paying attention in class, figuring out like how to study. And on top of that, I had some experiences with some students where they would kind of like either directly or indirectly insinuate that I was dumb, right? I think when you're young, like you kind of especially if you're like taking AP classes and stuff, it's part of your like identity that like, you know, you're ambitious and you're smart, and like, you know, like in sports or anything else, like you kind of dog on the people that aren't as competitive, I think. And I definitely received some of that, and it didn't help at all. And so I reached a point where I was like, I don't want to try at all anymore to like be good at school or to be ambitious, because like I feel like I'm just going to fail anyway. And so I started doing this thing where like if an exam would come up, right? Like maybe I'd peek at the notes, but then I would just stop. And then if, you know, the exam comes and I do well, great. If not, then if anyone ever says anything like, oh yeah, you're stupid, or see, like, you know, you don't know what you're doing, then in the back of my mind, I would know, well, I didn't actually put forth any effort. I didn't try, you know, like I was just sleeping, you know, so we don't really know what I'm capable of, you know? And like the big point was I had this fear of laying all that out on the line. Like, what if I really try and like fail? I'm like scared to like confront that, you know? And so that was like high school. I skipped a lot of school. I went to just kind of hang out or to play drums, which like was a big part of my life. I think that's why I got so ingrained in the band culture and community, was just because like it was a nice distraction from school and it was something to be good at. But then school started to come to an end, right? Like everybody submitted their college applications and they've taken their SATs and ACTs, and like I felt a sense of regret for the first time. Like I had never really had any regrets ever about anything up until that point. Like I just was like, life do be what it do, whatever. Like it's fine, right? Like things end up the way they do. But I really felt like I had squandered my time. Because I was looking around and it looked like all these people had made such good use of those 4 years and were able to enjoy it too. And I had this like deep desire to still learn, like that never went away. I just, like I said, I suppressed it because I didn't want to confirm that I was dumb or stupid or incapable. So I have that regret, and then everyone's kind of going off to college, and I think most of our friends went off to college because, you know, we grew up in Augusta, and so our friends kind of went off, and I was at home thinking like, man, I could have like, maybe I could have had more like freedom or choices. It wasn't necessarily about like the school or leaving. It was just about if I had used my time a certain way, I could have had the choice, I guess. And so I really thought about like, well, maybe in college, maybe I can use that as a time to like reinvent myself. Like maybe I can actually try, because I don't really know anybody here. They're off at other colleges, and if they're from here, I didn't really go to school with them, or, you know, the chance of me running into someone I know is going to be kind of small, right? Mm-hmm. And I also knew that like if anyone were ever trying to front their ego or to call me dumb or anything like that, I would know that it wasn't substantiated by anything, because we just started at a new college. I don't really know you. Like that's not real what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like faking it until I made it, I guess. And so college started, and like I completely like did not want to be even like resemble who I was in high school. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna like sit down and like read the book, read the PowerPoint. I'm gonna go to office hours or whatever. And I remember I had this like experience that really kind of got the ball rolling. And it was Bio 1107, which is like the first class you take in your pre-med prereqs. And I was like so enamored by the material, which it's like kind of comical now looking back and thinking like, wow, the mitochondria was so cool, dude. But like it really blew me away, right? Because I didn't pay attention to that. And like now I was like, dude, there's this world underneath everything that's responsible for the world out here. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to study really hard and like do well on this test. And Andy, you're actually one of the people that I like went to in the beginning to get advice on how to be a good student. And I remember you telling me that like, if you struggle, like go to office hours. That's what they're there for. So I kept that in the back of my mind. And the first exam rolls around and I'm like, I'm ready to kill it. Like I've been building up this like confidence for like a month, and I'm ready to do it. I finished the test. I'm pretty sure I knew absolutely everything. I felt great. A week later, the grade comes back and it's like a 70. And I was like devastated, right? Like I really wanted to try harder and to be different. And despite all my effort, again, I was confronted with the limit of my ability. And I wanted to quit. But like for the first time, there was this internal pushback to like, keep trying. Like, this can be a fluke. So I was like, okay, let's think. Well, what are all the smart people telling me to do? Okay, well, maybe I need to change how I study. Office hours. Maybe I'll go to office hours. And I almost didn't go. I was like, I need to go and see what I got wrong, right? That's what people have been telling me to do. So I go and I sit down in the office and I'm like, still fighting that voice in the back of my head. It's like, call it quits. Like you have so much time while you're ahead. If you just stop, like you're okay. Like you can make something else of your career path or whatever. Like don't waste all this time. But I'm like very consciously trying to ignore that. And so my professor comes in and she hands me the test and the Scantron and I'm looking over it and I'm really confused because I like half these answers I could have sworn were wrong. And so eventually I'm like, can you like explain these to me? I really I'm not sure like why this is the answer. And so she looks over the answers like I've circled or pointed out. And she like raises her eyebrow and then she's like, I'll be right back. And so she steps out. She's gone for like 5 minutes or so. I'm like, okay. She comes back in and she slides forward like a new Scantron and the test. And the grade at the top is like a 98. And she's like, I used the wrong form. And like, it's silly, right? But I almost quit because of all that effort I put in and like hard work, and it didn't result in the right thing. That little pushback I had, like that's such a stupid like little error, right? But I would have never known if I hadn't come back and kept following through with what I wanted, right? Which was to be different and to be a better student. I really wanted to be a good student. And so that was like a really big experience for me that like made me want to keep going forward with working hard. So school, it kind of keeps going and I talk to people and I think through some conversations with you and another student, I was like, okay, what can I do with this like degree, right? What can I do studying cells or whatever? And everyone was kind of like, well, medicine would be really cool. You get like this patient interaction, you get to like become an expert at something and wield like knowledge about the world to heal people. That's a superpower. So I was like, okay, really cool. And then I think I started shadowing, and the next kind of experience was where I really cemented the desire to pursue medicine, right? Because at first it was just like, okay, I've put my mind to learning this material that I thought was really hard, finding clinical experience to validate that desire and kind of ease me into the niche world of medicine as opposed to something like a PhD or like doing lab stuff is what I needed. And I got it. And I started shadowing, and I remember like this lady came into the clinic. It was a family medicine clinic for the underserved, and she came in with this very defeated demeanor. Like it looked like her eyes were just holding back like tears. Like the floodgates were about to unleash at any minute. She like it was like heavy, like she kind of like slumped into the chair, and so the physician kind of carried out his diagnosis and the appointment. At the end, instead of just ushering her along, he's like, is there anything else that we didn't really get to talk about? And then it like all the waterworks came in. Like she just started bawling, and it really moved me because my mom growing up struggled a lot with depression and anxiety. and raising 2 kids and my grandparents passing away, like a lot of stuff. And I can remember her being in that position. And I really remember when she had to, something happened with her primary care provider where my mom had to get a different one. But when she got the different other guy, she would come home from her appointments like seemingly lighter. And she started talking about them. And part of it was he was prescribing her the medication she needed to get back on her feet. But the other part of it was he would just listen to her. Like, what's it like being a mother without a mother? What's it like raising 2 kids? What's it like, not having like family to talk to, like just things that like she needed to hear or she didn't need to. Oh no. Nothing happened at all in that little intermission. Let's see, what was I talking about? I was talking about my mom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Okay. So her new physician, yeah, okay. He was just a great source of like comfort and solace for her in a time where she was really struggling. And it had a lot of impact at home. Like, externally, materially, like everything can be the same, but like, if you're a parent and like you just have like this emotional turmoil going on, like that really affects your ability to be there for your kids and for your spouse. And so just by talking to that primary care doctor who would listen to her, it had a lot of impact on me as well. And so going forward to when I was shadowing and that woman was in the clinic, I could see that she had the same body language that my mom had. And when the doctor started talking to her, she let out like all this emotion and trauma. And what it ended up being was she was really struggling with guilt because her health was in not a good state. And she had a lot of things to take care of, but at home, her husband was terminally ill and was bedridden. And I think at the time I was shadowing, he had just recently like lost his sight. So like he was like really in trouble. And the doctor just, he listened to her, kind of just sat beside her, and he had known them for a while. And he just very gently was like, he would be okay that you're here. He would want you to take care of himself. You're doing an amazing job. Like, life is really hard for you right now. And given the little emotional resources you have, and maybe even the physical and material ones, you're doing a fantastic job. And nothing about her situation changed. That didn't restore her husband's sight or ability to walk or increase his lifespan. But it equipped her with this comfort that someone as experienced and as practiced as this physician was in her corner with her. And beyond that, wasn't even really using his professional training. It was just this innate natural sensitivity to like the human spirit that he was using. And it was just so like beautiful to watch. And when I was in that clinic observing that, I realized, okay, like that's what someone did for my mom. This makes a lot of sense now. Like I kind of got it when I was younger, but I really get it now. And that was like an intense experience. And coupled with like my classroom learning and the joy I had there, I realized that the reason that medicine was so appealing to me was because it blends these two worlds where you have just the beauty of objectivity, where the answer is what it is, right? There's no speculation, we know. Like being an expert at that, like building up this vast repertoire of knowledge and banking on the fact that somewhere along the lines, in the next few years, someone might need one of those facts to save their lives. That's insane. But equally important is this very subjective human experience that isn't found in a textbook or a graduate program. You can kind of I guess, read psychology books or talk to people about their experiences, but you get that from living life, not from paying tuition. And so just the blending of that was like, okay, I'm ready to go. Like I have never been more like excited about medicine ever. So that's how I first got into it. That being said, there was still hardship I was facing in the classroom, because while I did have this new desire to learn and work hard, if you've never done it before, you're not going to be good at it, right? Like growing up, you can want to drive cars all you want. You can play Forza Motorsport, whatever, but like, it's not until you're behind the wheel that you've got a lot of learning to do, and you realize it's vastly different than like the fantasy in your head, right? Mm-hmm. And I still struggled with school a bit, because my methods weren't keeping track with the course load requirements. So I could kind of get away early on with rereading the chapter over and over and copying notes or copying the slides, right? Because if you've only got one science class, that works easy. When you've got 5, there's not enough time for that. Mm-hmm. And this is probably about my sophomore year. My GPA plummeted. I had done well my freshman year, but my sophomore year, I think I had like a 2.9 is what I had for the year or the semester or something. And that was worse than I was doing in high school. And I was like, again, confronted with that thought of, you should never have come all this way, because now you've just wasted your time. This year that you spent like dreaming up this idea of pursuing medicine, you could have just done something that was safer or more productive or whatever, right? And it really hit me. I was like, again, there's the limit of ability. Is that it? Like, did I do like what I was fully capable of? And I really thought about quitting again. And that summer I thought about it. But again, unlike any time before, I had that pushback of, maybe this is the fluke. Like, I had all this data, I thought, about who I was as a person and as a student, and it wasn't good data. It was like, you're lazy, you're stupid, you're incapable. And so logically, right, if you're pursuing like science, you pay attention to data and trends. And you want to look back on that and say, this has some predictive utility, right? Like, why wouldn't I listen to that? But you've got to like turn that off and live in denial of that. You have to do something different, but you can't listen to that. And I reached the conclusion maybe like a week or two before classes started that like, okay, I'm going to try again. I'm taking way harder classes this time, but again, I'm going to make sure that this past year was the fluke. Like, that's not the data I want to be generating. That's when I go back to people like you. And I remember you put me on like Anki and like active recall, all that. And I talked to like other, upperclassmen or med students, and I just got their take on what I need to be doing differently. And it really was just a big time thing, right? Like, I was really scared to start like abandoning my old study habits, because even though they weren't good, they provided security. Like, I knew what I could get with them. I didn't know what these new methods were going to give me, right? Mm-hmm. Turns out Anki is really good.
It is a gateway drug, and then some.
It is so good. And so I started doing things differently. And after that, it was like 4.0, 4.0, 4.0, 3.9, 3.7. Like, the rest of college, like, wasn't without its mishaps, but it was like stellar compared to that previous year. And it was, again, the point being that if I hadn't stuck with it, I never would have like known that I could have done that. Even though it felt like I was looking into like the deep end and like there was no future there, living in denial of that anyway, and operating as logically as you can and trying to ignore what your emotions are telling you, and just, this is what I want to do to achieve my dream or whatever, like, was really powerful. And so that was college. and then, that you can increase your like confidence, but you keep being met with experiences that test your newfound confidence. So it's almost like you never achieved any new confidence at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like objectively, it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm way more confident now that I'm, the MCAT is my biggest problem. That would have never been a big problem for previous me, right? But it still doesn't feel like you're capable of achieving it because it's commensurate with your confidence or your ability.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the MCAT came around, and I struggled with that too. I was okay at the science sections, but I have a bone to pick with cars, man. The cars, I could never figure out what they were looking for. All the test prep was like different. The AAMC material was good, and then you get to test day and it's different. And I don't know. I hate analyzing literature objectively. Like, I just want to read a book and play a movie in my head, right? I don't want to like analyze it, So I did struggle with that. And I took the MCAT twice, which is the reason I was on a gap year, technically, too. Because I graduated college, and I hadn't taken my MCAT because I was like, I didn't feel ready. I took it that summer, and I did okay. I think I had a 507 with a 122 in cars. Like, it was just, I remember the test day, I spent like 15 minutes on the first passage. I couldn't start like the engine. I took the MCAT again. I had some stuff going on at the time. I think this was a couple months later. So I took it in August, and then the second MCAT was in January. I had a lot of stuff going on life-wise. So I will say that I think that played a role. But again, I scored similarly, but I scored worse. I think I scored 2 points lower. And cars was very similar.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah. And so that was crazy because like a lot of things were going on there, right? Like the MCAT is like, if you did well everywhere else, but like you didn't do well in the MCAT, you're in trouble, right? Like that's just what you've been told your whole like academic or your whole pre-med life is that like the MCAT is like the big, you got to get a 528 or whatever, right?
It's the gatekeeper.
Yeah. And so I was like crushed by it. And to muster up the confidence and fortitude to take it again and do worse, I was like, limit of ability. I'm out of my depth here. Like, and then you go back. You're like, well, maybe my classes were just easier, and maybe the MCAT is like really what it is, and maybe that's the real gauge of my ability. And I thought about not applying, but again, there's just this urge that I had where I wanted to do it. Like, I want to be a doctor. Like, I can't see myself doing anything else. I got to do it. And so I used that gap year to start work as a caregiver, which was tremendously valuable. Like, not just in terms of bolstering my application, but just learning about being a human. Like, being a caregiver was amazing. But I did that, and then I applied, and I'm sure anyone that's non-traditional, like in the audience, could like testify that being outside of school, but having this big task of pursuing like higher education is so awful. Because at least in school, you have structure, right? Like, you do have to put in the work to do classes, but you've got classes. There's a schedule. You got to be here every day. You have stimulus from the environment that is directly guiding your performance and telling you about your performance. Like, you might not like it, but the grade you got on your OChem test will influence how you study or how you perform or how you move, right? There's none of that when you're non-traditional and you're working a job and you're not in school. You have to do all that on your own. And there's so much more time that you have, which is nice because you're not in class every day. You get to do things you quote unquote want, but it's almost paralyzing having that much time because you've got to, what if I'm not using it well? What if I'm being productive, but this clinical experience doesn't matter? This volunteering thing isn't going to be looked favorably on, or, what if this writing I'm doing for my application is just, you just go into like this rampancy, and it gets really really hard. But I had some like conversations with people and myself and was like, we just got to stay the course. And so I submitted my application. I waited a long time to submit my application. I think they open in May or June, and I submitted in like August, I think. And this is a little, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's getting to a point. I submitted my application, I wrote my application for one of the schools that I really wanted to attend. And I remember I was looking over it and I was like, okay, it looks good. I want to see what it looks like in the final, like a, you know, when you submit an application, it's not just a text box, it's like an actual PDF, right? And before you submit, you get a preview of that. So I wanted to see that. This was my secondaries. I clicked next on the page to see what my secondaries are going to look like. And on the next screen, I was met with a confirmation that my application was submitted. So I was like, oh my God, I just submitted my application on accident. Like, this is terrible. And again, like, I'm like, of course, this would be me. Like, talk about the limit of ability. Like, I can't catch a break, right? So I submitted, and I'm like, I looked it over, and thankfully it was decent. Like there weren't any grammatical issues. All the stories were pretty good, but I felt uneasy about it. I kind of reached the conclusion that like maybe I'm worrying too much, and maybe my worry is getting in the way. Maybe if I just like think about myself as an objective candidate out in space, like maybe this is not that bad. Maybe I just need to get the ball rolling on these. So I start, my secondaries for other schools. And then a week later, I get an email from the school that I accidentally submitted to. And that I look at it, I'm like, okay. And it says, congratulations, we want to interview you. And I freaked out, man. It was crazy. I got so hyped. I was jumping all around the house. I was like, I can't believe that, dude. Like, I fought like tooth and nail to just get that email, right? And like, it was worth it, right, to have that. And the interview is a whole experience, and then again, it's this whole waiting period for a year. But then I got waitlisted, and I was like, this is really difficult. Like, I was on like the doorstep, right, and like right when I was about to like cross the threshold, they told me to go wait in the driveway. Like that's what it felt like. And I was like, again, I could have done anything else besides this. Like, why am I putting myself through this torment? But then I was like, okay, you know what? A wait list is great. That is infinitely better than like a rejection. So let's just let that do its thing. We can't influence it. Let's just work towards the next application cycle. Turns out they wanted me. I got my acceptance. And like the euphoria was like off the chain, man. Like it was, I thought back to every experience where I thought about quitting. I was encouraged by every time that I pushed back. And I was like overjoyed by the fact that, I don't know, I just did all that. Like I didn't quit. And before I would have quit. I wouldn't have even started. And so to have that experience, I don't know, it's just like amazing. Like I'm never going to like forget that. I know there's a lot waiting for me in medical school that like I can't like even begin to like comprehend, but the journey thus far was like, it was insane, Yeah. So yeah, I don't really, that's that, I guess.
No, and those are all such important lessons that are setting you up very, very well for the challenges of medical school. I mean, like, it's funny just looking back now, and I challenge everybody watching and listening to also kind of take this moment to reflect on, like, sometimes you don't realize how far you've come until you look at, like, where you started. And, I mean, like, even look back, like, high school-wise, and I'm really sorry you had those experiences, and you can probably give a little bit of insight to what I was like in high school. We were on kind of two ends of the spectrum, but kind of united in some school spirit stuff. Like I was student section leader, you're drumline, and like obviously you're incredibly talented in that sector. And then us going to the same undergrad, something I also want to point out too, is when I accepted my contract for the program, I saw staying at Augusta University as like shackles on me, like weighing me down. It's like I don't want to go here, and I think for you had a different perspective on it. That was probably a lot more positive and uplifting. Of this is like a new beginning for you, and then not just that, but we all like the dog on like our hometown small college, right? Yeah. There's nothing much going on here. Yeah. Like we have the entirety student population of like half a UGA freshman class.
Yeah.
But like when you interviewed, who was in the room with you, like the interview room?
Oh, dude, yeah. Oh man. So we had our interview. It was on like Zoom or whatever. And the way it started was, okay, like, hey, like this is the faculty. We want to get to know you. What's your name, your major, and the university you're attending or went to. And I'm not even joking. Like the first third of the people who interviewed, it was like, hi, I'm so-and-so, neuroscience at UC Berkeley. Hi, I'm so-and-so. It's Brown, Columbia, Johns Hopkins, Case Western, like just all these crazy good schools. I was like, the joke I like tell you is like, you talking about Columbia University, bro. I mean Columbia County. Like I don't know about no Columbia University, bro. What are you talking about? Yeah, it was crazy to like be in like the room with all those people, but it was awesome too, you know.
And you just Will Doy, Augusta University.
Yeah, from Augusta, home of the Masters.
Oh, but like that just comes to show that one, if you do end up going to a smaller university, you earned and deserve to be in the same room as all those people. You earned your spot in your interview just as much as everybody else.
Yeah.
No matter of the context, the degree, and whatever prestige of their school holds. And I think that's a huge point that like I always like to drill into people, that like you don't have to go to some like ridiculously prestigious college to get into medical school, but like I can talk all day long. Exhibit A.
Yeah, no. And like I'm glad I experienced that so I can tell people about it too. Like I don't know. I understand like the sentiment that like I didn't go to this great amazing school. Like maybe I don't have the resources or the the tutoring when I'm like, in elementary school, whatever. Like there's a table with seats at it. You can pull up your own seat, you really can. Like it in the least like egotistical way possible. When all those people were introducing their fancy like colleges and degrees and stuff, like I felt that. I was like, I do feel like I have a seat at the table, right? Like you're not locked behind poor decisions you made when you were younger, or a lack of experiences you didn't have, like being so entrenched in academia when you're younger. Like you can impose your will, and like it becomes reality. Like really, like it's not easy, right? Like it's obviously very difficult. It's like you're in the crucible. You gotta burn off all the impurities and the dross, but like, and that's painful. But like when you come out, like you make your seat at that table for real. Yeah. I really believe that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I could definitely see it. I mean, I remember you telling me you wanted to go to med school, I think near the end of your, I guess our freshman year, sophomore year, and I was like, I thought you started at like engineering at first, right, or something like that.
No, I was a psych major.
Psych, yeah,
psych.
And to hear that come around, at least for me, I didn't have any doubt. I was like, dude, absolutely go for it. And I truly believe that it is to be a doctor does not take, being a genius. It does not take being whatever state or private school defined gifted to become a future physician. It is all about how bad you want it and how much work you're willing to put in.
Yeah.
And I am telling you, if you put in enough work, anyone can become a doctor. The important part is that human aspect that you talked about.
Yeah.
That separates the doctor from like the true physician, the healer. Yeah. And that just takes time and experience, and like some people arrive to it earlier, some people need that time. But like all those lessons of pushing through, and especially for anybody listening and maybe going like, man, this sounds a lot like me right now. No, there is a means to an end here.
Yeah. No, 100%.
But yeah, like seriously, I'm so proud, dude. Like it's been such a long journey.
Yeah. Dude, I appreciate it, man. Yeah. No. Like anyone listening, like you also do your best to find somebody like Andy, like who, like, people, like, you don't have to like owe anyone anything, right? Or like the idea of like coaching me through how to be a better student, how to pursue medical school, like may or may not have seemed relatively futile, but like the treatment I got from like talking to you or like your friends was like I wasn't any different. And I really think that like expedited the process, because I do think you can drum up that motivation without like people's encouragement and expectations or whatever. It's very difficult. I think you can do it, but having that, like when I did talk to you, was like very helpful, because there were people, like I said, there's an ego with academia, and like some people I'd talk to, and like as like I was bothering them or whatever, I was like, I'll find somebody else, right? Like I'll talk to someone that will give me that time of day. And like, nah, you helped me a lot through that, man, for real.
Oh, dude.
The audience is lucky to have you.
That, dude, I'm telling you, I played such a minimal part in this. Like, I'm just happy to be a bystander and be a little bit of encouragement, because I can talk my head off all day long. But the person on the receiving end has to take those steps, and you did absolutely everything you needed to. And like, I mean, you're gonna be such a great physician. I know it. And like, seriously, there's so many people out there that I hope can relate to this story. And if this is your nudge to take that leap and push through that mental barrier, I hope you're listening, and I hope you really take that to heart, because things work out.
They do. Yeah.
So kind of like closing thoughts, do you have any advice for particularly students? I know this is probably going to go out in the summer. It's MCAT season. Mm-hmm. People are probably taking their first, second attempt at it. If they already took it, they're prepping for the application cycle. Like what are, obviously I had a weird process of getting into medical school. Like, from your perspective, what's some insight and some tips to kind of make that season of life go a little bit smoother? Yeah.
I mean, MCAT application, all of it is so difficult. And I think everybody's like in a different spot, right? Like sometimes MCAT, you might need to hunker down more than you will elsewhere. I would say that like uniformly, like if you're struggling with like, is this worth it? I can tell you that it is, and obviously you'll have to experience it yourself. But like when I got accepted, like I had this personal gratification that like I did it. But everyone around me too, my family, my parents, my grandparents, my best friends, like everybody was there to say you did it too, and was there to encourage me and to like help me look forward to being the doctor that I want to be. And all of that, like it was just such an intense feeling that like after having experienced that, I have not ever looked back on my time taking the MCAT, my time failing classes, my time, struggling to volunteer, whatever, and been like, that was not worth it. the most painful of all that was worth it. And, you know, if you do treat yourself like someone you're caring for, right? Like if you aren't spending time with family, you aren't taking care of your health, you're losing friends, don't let that fall to the wayside. Like medicine will always be there for you. You can always go to medical school, but you don't get your time back to enjoy life. And so I would say that making sure you enjoy that can be really beneficial. Like even if you're technically losing time that you could put towards studies, you're getting in touch with this richness of life that is like way more valuable than that. So yeah, I would highly recommend to do that, and keep on.
And I would mirror that advice for the entirety of your career.
Yeah.
Those are hard lessons if you don't learn them.
Yeah.
In MCAT season, it'll rear its ugly head in STEP season, and then oral board season.
Yeah.
So celebrate each part of the journey. And best of luck to everybody applying this year. You got this. Believe in yourself and believe that you can pull up that chair to the table.
You can do it.
Oh, thank you so much, future Dr. Doik.
Oh, dude, thank you, Dr. Wynn.
Soon,
man.
Soonish, man. Best of luck, dude.